Hello and welcome everyone to this new episode of our podcast. We have been doing it for closer to a year now. My name is Wajid Ali. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada. And the topic we are going to talk today about is the future of the sales. And it's really exciting topics because a lot has changed and a lot is changing when we talk about the industry, the tools, and the processes that are in place today or that would be in place in coming future. We'll take a little bit deep dive into this topic and we'll try to cover it into potentially a number of episodes. It might not be just one episode, so stay tuned with us. With me is my co-host and partner, Simon. Simon, go ahead, introduce yourself, and then we will just jump into the topic.
Thank you, Wajid, and good morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining this new session of the Sales Leadership Podcast. As Wajid mentioned, the purpose of these sessions is to share best practices, some of our experiences, and hope that will help you as you advance in your sales journey. I am Simon Rodriguez, and I'm based in Calgary, Western Canada. I've been working in technical sales, mostly around the energy spectrum over the last 18 years, now getting close to 18, 20 years, and different roles in sales, technical sales industry. And we look forward, as we did mention, to dive into, we're now 2025. There are many trends coming up, many things that we have as well in terms of expectations, both on the customer side of things, on the seller side of things. And I think we're going to be covering some really good topics. And with that, I'll hand it over to Wajid. I know you have kind of an interesting way to kick this off. Wajid, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Simon. So, the last episode we were talking about the role of small habits and how what role it plays in our life and how important it is to have consistency in our approach. So if anybody has missed that episode, go ahead. It's on our live feed. It's on my homepage and also on Simon's page. You can go ahead and review that for yourself. But the key takeaway on that episode was the consistency, right? How we can stay consistent. And we are kind of building up on that. And we thought it would be a nice topic to start since we are just into the beginning of the year. So why don't we look into the future of the sales? And lately we have been had a lot of internal discussions about it between myself and Simon. We also posted an article on LinkedIn. I'll leave um, link to that article at the end of this conversation. So if anybody's interested, you guys can go and read it for yourself. It's about five minutes read. So Simon, let's dive deep into it. And the first thing that comes to my mind is when we look at it, the future of the sales, right? We are going through and we are seeing it. The technology is evolving. It's an unprecedented change that is coming into our life when we talk about technology, especially when it comes to AI and automation, right? And AI and automation is also bringing in a lot of tools to support the sales industry and sales folks, sales leadership. When it comes to artificial intelligence and automation, what is the first thing that we should be aware of? What is it that would you recommend while we are going through this transition?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Wajid. And as you share, like with technology, in particular AI, that's something we have been seeing that growth over the last couple of years more significantly, and 2025 won't be an exception, right? They might be the year in which most of those tools become available to pretty much everyone, right? People sell it from all around the globe. They will have those tools. And the first use case, let's put it this way, that comes to my mind is lead generation. How to, once you define based on your market, you define your audience and your targeted let's say audience, then you go into a lead generation process, and that's where I see AI playing a role. Obviously, automating some of the tasks, reaching out to prospects in a more effective way. Now, we need to keep in mind that it's not only that piece of the automation process. Based on the criteria that you will define, you will have leads that may be high quality leads, maybe some are leads that are not as. So I still think the human obviously involvement, and that human
Right.
touch of qualification is
Yeah.
essential. I see it as a first step with it in terms of being able to increase the coverage when it comes to prospecting, right? So I see it as a tool, quite interesting tool that supporting the prospecting process and helping the lead generation stage. Now, you will still need to go through the qualification process, going through your typical process to curate all those leads into meaningful, obviously, opportunities, right? But I'm curious, that's kind of my take, but I want to get your thoughts around that too. I know you mentioned in the article a couple of approaches with automation and also lead generation, but is that in line to what you're seeing, or do you have a different view on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. It's something that we are seeing quite extensively being adopted in a lot of organizations, both enterprise level and even with smaller businesses. And it is helping actually. It is effective. It's helping to the point that, as you mentioned, it helps you as a salesperson, saves your time because our time is valuable. And if AI or automation can help us in some sort of lead generation, but also help us qualify some of the prospects, as opposed to a human doing it. I mean, we all know our time is valuable. So if that automation piece can help us, it's kind of an added bonus to our timeline. And I also agree with you that we still need to have some human touch in that, because at the same time, I guess as humans we need to have that connections with other human being. But another thing that comes to my mind when we talk about AI and automation is the conversational piece, which I don't see is at this point is highly adopted in the industry.
Mm,
The chatbots. I'm talking
yeah.
about the chatbots, right? The chatbots is, I guess, in beta. They're in beta phases. In a lot of chatbots are in testing phase. But I've tried some of those, and it's really good for, at even if you are at a point where you want to try like a role play, you know, if you want to train yourself for an upcoming high level meeting, how can you do that? How can you utilize the AI and the automation, especially the AI chatbots? You can go on a chatbot, you can practice with chatbot, you can give them the role of your customer, and you can be a salesperson. You can ask them some good um, probing questions, some good open-ended controlled questions, closed-ended questions, and all those. So I think that is also something that we will start seeing more and more coming into the sales industry. I don't see that at this point as we speak. It is highly adapted. What is your experience? Have you seen those in some of the organizations that you interact with, or just like me, you're just seeing it at early experimental phases?
Yeah, that's an interesting take with it because I've seen in both as a user, as you mentioned, even if we're just any of the services we currently use, having that initial interaction, and I see it. I agree with you in terms of the limitation that is currently in place. You can see it's kind of a basic level interaction, gathering some initial information, maybe kind of a time some of the frequently asked questions, right? Maybe about product, about what you're looking for, time frame. But you're right. I'm seeing it more and more across the board, even as a first layer, right? That tier one type of
Mhm.
because it can really help even with qualification. One use case I'm thinking right now is, let's say you go into a website of a technology company to learn more about a platform or a solution. I've seen some of those in which they qualify, they do like a high level qualification, like, are you looking for a solution? What's the size of your enterprise? Are you looking for a solution in the next 6 to 12 months, or are you just evaluating? So capturing that initial level of data, that tier one, and then passing that data to someone like a business development rep or a salesperson that's gonna take it from there. I think it saves time, and it helps to make the whole process more efficient. To your point, I think there is potential where they can help us qualify even more. But I see it with this first layer for basic qualification. I agree with you that it's is more in that beta version type of thing right now, but it's still helpful in some cases. And I see that as you describe as a potential trend throughout the year, increasing that capability, right? So we're at least helping that initial qualification stage. And I'm curious, right? What will be the extent of that? Because if you look at the full sales cycle and that support, let's say from chatbots so what will be the extent of that support throughout the sales cycle?
Yeah.
That's yet to be seen. But I agree with you that in the initial qualification, not only prospecting and let's say lead generation, but even in the initial qualification stage.
Yeah, very well said, Simon. Like now the question for us as sales leaders, right? We are going through a transition where we see that some companies are moving from conventional approaches to much more AI based and automation based approaches. So they're like the first call it the leaders in this innovative adopting this innovative technology. Other companies or organizations they're still um, waiting and trying to analyze, assess, and evaluate the value and see, I guess, the outcomes before they jump into it. But you know, at the back of our minds, we all know that this thing will gonna come, even if we agree, we disagree, we like it, we don't like it. But the AI is real. It's already here. It's taking a lot of, um, I guess, a lot of roles already. When I say roles, it's kind of helping us in a lot of ways. But as a sales leader, how would you encourage your team members or your organization to start looking into this avenue?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point because usually one thought that at the beginning and still sometimes comes up is up to which extent AI or technology in general automation will let's not say replace, but be a differentiator between, let's say, a great sales rep or sales manager or a standard conventional one. And in my view, is not let's say AI itself, but just using the tool, right? Like in my experience, perhaps those reps, those salespeople who uses AI as a tool, but obviously leveraging that tool to improve their effectiveness, to reach out to more people, are at the end of the day more successful. So back to your question, from a leadership perspective, I will embrace and support the use of a tool, right? But obviously within limits, we want to still keep authenticity. We still want to have that human touch, and I think it's about striving with that balance, right? With it having being efficient, leveraging the tools, but at the same time ensuring that there is that human connection, that human touch throughout the process. And I know you call out, you mentioned that in the article in terms of hyper personalization, right? How can we put that human or that tailor pitch and is crafted, but at the same time you're adding that human connection. So what are your thoughts? What's your take on that, right? Because I think it's about striving on that balance of the technology, but keeping that authenticity at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something, since we're talking about the future of the sales. So we just touched on the first item, which I think is important, which I think is essential, as we said, AI and the automation piece. But the hyper personalization or the human touch, again,
Hmm.
nobody can take it away. It's something that is essential. It's something which is the core, which is the main part. So we will continue our conversation and we will begin our next episode on that hyper personalization and the role of the human and what role we can play. So at this point, since we are almost at the time, I'm looking at it at the 15 minutes mark, and we wanted to make it short and concise for our audience. So we'll take a goodbye here, Simon, but we'll get back on the next episode and we'll continue with this article and we'll build up on the next points.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and stay tuned for the second part, as what you mentioned. I think it's going to be building on this existing one. So stay tuned on the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you again for joining, and
Thanks.
we'll see you in the next episode.